We're gonna have the beautiful couple, Tisha and Giovanni Balzarani, live from Seattle. Not
Yes.
me this time, but the couple is in Seattle now, of course, with our Daniel Smith family. John and the rest of the team are in another event. So today we're going to have Gio lead us to a creative session. And topic would be grounds and tinting effects for watercolor grounds. So without much ado, take it away, Gio.
Okay. Thank you, Etta. Thank you to all. Good evening, good night. In this case, good evening. But in Italy, it's good night. Thank you to all. And again, in Seattle, in this case, in my room hotel. And today, I talked with John for the fabulous product is watercolor ground. This is, and this product is very versatile product because is made for painting watercolor in every surface, every surface. Is a particular tool because I have a little marble inside, a little powder inside, very fine, very fine. And it's perfect for create all the smooth surface or material surface. In this case, for example, I show you in a paper. This is a buff titanium, iridescent gold, Mars black. Titanium white is not. Is transparent. And in this case, for example, I have a short camera, sorry. Okay. A little zoom. Show it. Sorry. Okay. I use the transparent watercolor ground after the writing, and this is before, and I create the material effect. It's very versatile tool. This product is available in two sides, for example, in these two sides, and available in 6 color. One is titanium white, Mars black, transparent watercolor ground, the beautiful iridescent gold, the buff titanium is very beautiful. Another, and pearlescent white. It's very particular for the pearlescent effect on black. When for example, one particularity when I use the transparent is similar to white, titanium white, but when I dry, I'll show this inside. It's very. In this case, I apply, for example, on black or in another surface. It's similar to a titanium white, little transparency, but when dry, it's completely transparent. For example, in this bag, I use the transparent in the face, children face, it's completely transparent. I paint it after for beautiful effect. Okay. And now the focus is for tinted watercolor. But before I show the watercolor, when use the watercolor.
Yes, some house rules. I may need Angela's help. We would need Angela's help. Angela, you're here, guys.
Yes. Hi.
Can you help Angela to read out questions from Facebook and yes,
Yeah.
from
Of
Zoom.
course.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, carry on, Gio.
Yeah, I'm here. Please.
Yeah, carry on.
Okay. Okay. I show, for example, this blue, this cobalt blue on buff titanium. It's perfect for the smooth surface or material surface for create this effect. I show that, sorry, the zoom. Little zoom, oops, sorry. Okay. In this case, for example, with this effect, or orange on iridescent gold for create a beautiful gold effect on in material surface or smooth surface. Oops. And all the duochrome and pearlescent is perfect for black. Or, for example, one yellow, in this case is Orion yellow on Mars black. It's very light for create the, for example, the night sky, wash night sky. In this case, I don't have with me the duochrome, but this Mars black is very perfect for the beautiful effect. I like the zoom.
Giovanni, which one is the blue one? What color is the blue one?
It's cobalt blue.
Excuse me?
Cobalt blue. Cobalt blue.
Gold. Yeah, okay.
Okay. And in transparent, in this case, I use the transparent watercolor on paper, but the transparent watercolor is perfect, for example, on a piece of wood for show the tenus and the texture of the wood. But in this case, it's very perfect. It's possible to watercolor ground painting wet on wet. This is a big question. Yes, it's possible. I show it. In this case, apply more water.
Giovanni,
Yeah,
you just mentioned about painting wet into wet on the, do you mean onto the actual surface? I forget what to call it. Would that be like painting, is it fresco painting that they used to paint wet onto plaster?
Hai capito?
yes.
Hai capito quello che ti ha chiesto?
C'ho l'audio un po' basso.
Vuoi che ti spiego quello che lui ti ha chiesto?
Se è possibile, sì.
Perché lui ti sta chiedendo se questo che hai spiegato del wet in wet è come fare un layer base, come si faceva una cosa che non ho capito, una cosa che si faceva prima sulla plastica. Perché capito meglio come si fa questo wet in wet, perché non è rimasto chiaro.
Okay, okay. Okay, this paper is 300 grams, is lana aquarelle.
140 pound full price.
For example, Jan, I apply the water in above titanium, only the water. And I use the Queen Gold.
But this is not on this white or black or this this paste, right?
Yeah.
It's directly on the paper.
Yeah.
Perhaps, Giovanni, you should mention that the ground is already dried and not wet.
Okay. This is a completely dry. The dry ground is better for 24 hours. It's possible to use the water in watercolor ground or maximum 10% for dilution, and for apply another layer is 24 hours is better. And in this case, for example, I use the brush, the sponge brush, and I have this smooth surface. But when I use the normal brush, in this case flat, I prefer the synthetic brush, not use for the quality of your brush, the Kolinsky sample, for example. When I use this flat brush, I create this in section. When I apply the second layer, in this case, I apply in this way. When I apply the second layer, I prefer cross the layer for connecting layer by layer. Is the best use when I use this brush. When I use the sponge brush, it's different because the sponge brush, for example, I take the Mars Black. In this case, I apply another layer. The sponge brush is perfect for create a texture, or in this way, or in this way, or plug. It's very perfect for the ground.
Giovanni?
Yeah.
Do you find the best technique to be building the layers up in thin layers, or is it better to apply in one thick layer or a couple of thick layers?
È meglio una sola wash, ma molto spesso o
No, it's better to apply, for me, 3 or 4 layers, very low thickness for arrive and the perfect thickness is better. Because when I apply the one layer on with the high thickness, is probably your product is crackling. In this case, for example, I show you.
Thank you. Yeah.
This is a material. It's possible, but is not a best solution. I prefer apply 3-4 layer for my works.
Giovanni, there is a question here about beauty. She's asking, does transparent ground, can it be used for repairing a scratched surface of the paper? Okay.
Absolutely. In this case, for example, I use the transparent watercolor for create in this bag. It is a paper bag, fast food paper bag. And I painting, I show more zooms. Okay. I painting my little piece of. I apply only in this part.
Uh,
I use
try to destroy a part or rip a part of this paper and then try to repair it with the ground.
okay.
That is,
try it.
I think she wanted to know that. If you have a tear or I have a scratch or I have a broken part of the paper, if you put the ground on it, will it repair the paper? I think that was Shilpi's question.
Yeah, absolutely. I show it. Sorry for my kids. A little example to.
But this is normal paint or ground.
This is a ground.
A ground with color.
Transparent, is it?
No, this is a painting. Painted on watercolor ground.
Ah, there is transparent watercolor ground there.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a transparent watercolor ground.
Okay.
That's why we still see the eyebrow and the colored parts of the face.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
And that's why you can paint watercolor on it.
Sorry. It's very versatile component, this ground, because it's have a very beautiful use for created very effect in every surface.
We have another question here. Say, is there any surface that we should not use the watercolor ground on?
Sorry?
C'è qualche superficie dove non dobbiamo dipingere con il ground? C'è qualche parte che non dobbiamo assolutamente usare ground?
Is for example, on shoes is because when I wash the ground, probably deleted, and sulle superfici morbide, Angela. For example, the towels is probably crackling, but in this case on the paper is not crackling.
So paper, glass, plastic, wood.
Yeah, glass.
Because I know that Silvia Monge has used it for tiles, so she can paint it on tiles, but basically not on soft surfaces or things that you have to wash.
Okay, perfect. Now I show the watercolor ground tinted. I use 20 color on titanium white, on titanium, the titanium white. I take one part, it's very, I take one part, it's very, I take one part, it's very.
So, Theo, is that the transparent or the white?
This is a titanium white.
Theo, is that the transparent or the white?
The white.
This is a titanium white.
Theo, is that the transparent or the white?
The white, the
Yes.
white.
Let's check. There's an echo. Someone's speaker.
I have a
is-
return of the speaker. We are sorry.
Thank you. It's good now.
Yeah, perfect. I use a small part of the color. In this case, is really I use very light ground. Or apply, for example, the second layer on black.
We have a message here from Caroline. Yes, Caroline.
Yeah.
We can do a share screen. Gia has always been very good when it comes to like showing how-tos. And as you all know, for our community who are with us today, we have another support artist who is just willing to share with us sample artwork. So maybe after this tinting with yellow and titanium white, we could invite Caroline to show us some of her artworks using brown.
Yeah, absolutely. And another color. In this case, I used one Primatech, the Jadeite. Now apply only a few drops of water and create the beautiful, similar to aquamarine green.
So I'm seeing, Gia, that when we do tinting, there's
Yeah.
more proportion of white versus the color, right?
In this case, I use the 17% part of titanium white, the rest of color, and at maximum 10% of water, a few drops of water.
And what proportion of white towards the color?
Is 17% in this
70.
case.
Okay.
Thank you.
70, 30, 10, right?
Yeah, yeah.
70 for the white, 30 for the color, and 10 for water.
Another color.
That
In this
sounds
case,
cute.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use one orange. This is spiral orange. In this case, only 2 dots of orange. Is only 10% in this case. And create with pyrrolon this beautiful rose. For the best mixing, I use a little drop of water. Mixing very well. Okay, now I apply on paper. Sorry for the voice of my kids. It's possible to mixing all the ground or create a base. For your painting.
So Giovanni, this could be the basic layer for your painting as well,
Yeah,
even on paper.
this is a paper, but it's perfect for canvas.
Okay.
I created a beautiful gray base. Now I show is, for example, it's a zoom. I use the normal brush and show the brush strokes. And when I apply the second layer, I apply in this way. Is recommended. Because when I crossing the layer, is a perfect connection layer by layer. Okay. Now I prepare another color. I use another red, pyro red. In this case, I prepare the color before I show this step. And apply a little part of ground. I change the sequence. Or have a more color, strong ground. When I use the color diluted before, is better for the mixing or tinted ground. You have a more strong effect. In this case, it's possible to apply the ground with brush and after use the sponge brush for create a little texture. In every layer, obviously. Sorry. Now apply the one blue, ultramarine blue. Yes, it's possible to mix it with metallics. Color, I use
With what?
metallic color. I read in the chat the question. Metallic watercolor, yes.
You mean metallic means
Is
Yeah.
duo now is duochrome or bronze pearlescent is perfect, but the powder metallics is not good. Because it for the powder is very difficult to mixing. This is the ultramarine blue. Okay, and try another color. In this case, mixing two watercolor before, for example, cobalt blue and queen sienna. One dot of cobalt and one dot of queen sienna. I'm mixing before without water. Apply now little drops for create this beautiful light brown ground.
Giovanni,
Yeah,
would these be acceptable in a competition?
A good question.
I don't know very well, but I think yes, because many societies is approved many tools now. Probably is in the category with mixed media.
Media, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Theo?
a water soluble medium, and I have seen people reclaim their whites in a background of a painting by using the ground. And so, like with any competition, you would just want to look at your ingredients, and you would want to just look at what they say about for submission. And yes, you could probably slide in just a little more off the radar by saying it's mixed media, but it is a water soluble medium.
Okay, but you make, so like a watercolor show, the American Watercolor Society, say, would you do that, Gabriel?
I would need to check the surface. So say if the surface requirements say that my painting surface, that could be a possibility. But if you're using it as paint, so
Right.
it's better to always check and you know, AWS, NWS, they're always updating you know, the policies and procedures, so you should always just check before you enter.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You're
thank you.
welcome.
You have to check carefully the rules of the open call. And sometimes they allow 10% that is not watercolor. So for each society is different. You have to check the open call.
Thank you very much.
At this point, since we have Gabriel's screen on, would you like to share something about what you have there, Gabriel?
Yeah, for sure. So what I have is a surface that is this was either matte board, an acid-free matte board, or illustration board that what I had under the surface, the watercolor ground covered it really well. And I chopped it into a whole bunch of 5x7 sheets. So I had shared this one prior. This is a watercolor plein air piece during 4th of July. So this is all watercolor on watercolor titanium white. And then I've never tried it. So I was told, we were going to talk about staining watercolor ground. So I thought I would take some of our Daniel Smith walnut ink and kind of put down a pre-wash of the ink. And I was considering putting down the wash and then painting over it with watercolor. But now since it's so sexy and good looking, I think I'm gonna just leave it alone. But I've never done this. I've never put the actual walnut ink to change the color of the watercolor ground. So this was completely cured, has been for a couple of months. Actually, I'd say probably 3 months. I had coated this surface, and here we are laying down. And all this wonderful stuff is the texture. And if I didn't want this texture, what I would do is take a little fine sandpaper. But I'm actually really liking this. It looks fun.
It's making it look very antique gold, Gabriel.
That could be just a little bit of the lighting situation. I'm looking pretty tan too.
Right.
Thank you, Gabriel. Now we invite Caroline, and I think she has some sample artworks ready.
I do. How are you all? I love the fact that this ground is something that has expanded my watercolor world incredibly. And I very much like to experiment. You all would know that by all the things that I show you. But when I first found the ground, I found that I could paint it onto a 3-dimensional vessel and then use watercolor actually over the ground to paint my picture. And in some cases, I could make it up my whole canvas and actually do literally a 3-dimensional jar. And I've covered the ground right up to this point here and then painted my picture over the top. So I don't have to have 2-dimensional artworks. I can have 3-dimensional artworks. And I find that was a really cool thing to do with watercolor. Something interesting and unique. I often go to the op shops and find cool shaped vessels. They might have ugly, patterning or, sort of dated styling. But with the watercolor ground, I can modernize them by giving them a clear or a white new finish and then create a new painting on the surface to change them. But there was a lot of people asking about what kind of surface you can put it on and how much tint can you do. So you can actually make some really, really cool surfaces that almost look like they're silk or satin by using the gold ground mixed with a little bit of tint. So I use a bit of watercolor. So this has got olive green and gold watercolor mixed with the gold ground. And so you get that sort of fantastic shimmer on your surface. Mixing really bright colors. I've used quinacridone red pigment to actually get a really, really hot pink. And in this one, I've used burnt umber, titanium white ground to get something rich. So you can actually start with quite a lot of depth to your background if you want to add that to your artwork.
Caroline,
And this is just a sample. Yep.
excuse me, there is a question here in Facebook. Do you seal the watercolor after painting the vessel?
Yeah. Yes, I do. You can seal it with either a spray varnish. You can use a gloss or a matte. But in my cases, with these vessels, I actually sealed it with a cold wax polish. I use a brand called Languages for my cold wax. And so I actually then able to rub it onto the surface to seal the watercolor. So if I want to use that vessel as a vase, I can take that now to my kitchen sink and rinse the vessel, and my watercolor painting doesn't get rinsed off. So definitely. But there's different ways of sealing the surfaces. I also use 2-pack pours. I use things like this one. I've actually, this surface is finished with a gold foil on a black watercolor ground and a gouache and watercolor painting. So there's different ways that I've actually finished the surfaces with different ones. The idea that something like painting on Perspex, this is literally a sheet of Perspex. I was able to create a white canvas area so I could put a painting onto it. And in this case, that's actually is not sealed yet. But if I was wanting to exhibit that piece, I would want it sealed. So I would choose to either spray varnish it or to wax seal it. And then I know it would be stable. But it doesn't actually have to have a sealant on it. It just runs the risk of moisture making the watercolor become loose on the surface, because it literally sits on the surface of the ground.
Caroline,
In these cases,
if that was framed, you wouldn't need to seal it, right? Just because it's
correct. Yes, correct. It's up to you if you need to seal it and why you need to seal it. In the cases of these ones, this is the beautiful piece that I've got in the Freedom exhibition in Ukraine. And it is sealed, if I can show you possibly, it's actually got a resin. So it's got a 2-part resin pour. So it looks like a sheet of glass over the top, but it's actually a polyurethane resin. And that's the same as this one. This one, you can see the reflection in it. And that's because it's got a polyurethane resin pour on it. So there's so many ways you can use it and so many different surfaces. I wanted to show this was just a sample using the black with the iridescence. You can see how they iridescent shimmer on the black. And that's just been a sample painting on a simple cradle canvas. So the watercolor ground, what it does is open up your watercolor to any surface basically, except for if it's too porous, of course it's not going to work, but anything that's reasonably flat, any product, whether it's glass, canvas, wood, ceramic, metal, all those things, this opens up all of the opportunities to expand your watercolor world into lots and lots of surfaces. I've been experimenting with the watercolor ground, where I've actually been placing interesting papers. These are just rice papers, and I've actually collaged them onto the page so that when I create a picture, I've got a 3-dimensional surface because of the papers that I've basically like glued in with the watercolor ground, so that underneath the watercolor is actually a little bit, instead of a flat surface, it's actually got a little bit of rigid and makes it a bit more interesting. So I'm doing like topographical work, and so the ridges actually make it interesting to look at instead of a flat artwork. So it's quite, I don't know if you can see all the ridges from the paper. They're quite interesting, but it's look, one of my most favorite products to really take my world into a new direction with watercolor. And I highly recommend some really good experimenting and expand your world. The only other tip I can give you is we all know that our watercolor papers can age, and the size can ruin the paper. It can diminish, and your watercolor paper becomes basically not watercolor paper anymore. Well, instead of throwing the stack of paper out, you could use ground and recover the paper, and actually still have the beautiful paper and refix the surface so that you can apply watercolor again to it by doing a wash of ground on it. So it's another tip for the watercolor ground possibilities. But yeah, lots and lots of ideas. Yeah.
Caroline,
Yes.
with the vase, have you ever tried painting onto unglazed, you know, before it's fired?
No, I haven't. I haven't done any raw. I've only done fired ceramics. I think if it's
quite
unglazed,
well on that. If you
oh,
just put-
absolutely. Yeah, like as long as it's a hard surface,
yeah.
your watercolor ground's going to adhere to it. And as long as you give it the drying time, the 24-hour drying time, you have a beautiful, it's almost like a gesso for watercolor artists. So you have a finished surface ready to take your watercolor paint to. So that makes it work really well.
You think that then might be able to have a proper glaze fitted over it and then fired?
No. No, Ian, I think you'll find that glazes are actually made from fine sand and fine glass, which is why the colour survives the kiln firing. Whereas if you put watercolour and watercolour ground in a kiln, it's just going to burn. That's not a practical solution at all. No, it does not replace ceramic glazes in any way. What I'm doing is taking a finished ceramic piece that may be ugly or plain and adding a ground to it and turning it into a paintable surface for watercolor. So it's all about watercolor, not about ceramics.
Preserving it with
Fine.
a cold solution.
No, it would still burn. No.
No,
The kiln firing is 1200 degrees, 1100, 1200 degrees. Anything you put in there that's not designed for that temperature would simply just burn.
what I mean is, when you've done your artwork on it, preserving it with a cold solution, i.e., what you said, wax or
Yes.
or,
Yes.
or maybe even a lacquer.
Absolutely, absolutely. A spray varnish, a paintable varnish, a wax polish, anything. Even some people just use Mod Podge, which is like a PVA glue solution to finish a surface. So there's all sorts of things you can finish it with. It's really about how well do you need it sealed for what is the product and where is it going to be displayed. Do you need to be able to clean it? The sealing allows you to, rinse it or put a damp cloth over it to clean it. So the sealing of it is really about the versatility and the longevity of the artwork on the surface.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Caroline. As always,
Okay.
we all know whenever you join Thursday Live and even Friday Live, there's so much to unpack. I think what we're going to do, the artworks that we're going to be share during live, especially today, we'll have them posted on our socials, and we'll gather some explanations and just short process captions from our guest artists. And now we're going to move on to another artist. Thank you again, Caroline. And I remove this.
It's okay.
And two more ready to share some of their artworks using ground. We have Sabine, all the way from Switzerland. Take it away, Sabine. And then after this, we have Ashley, and then we'll finally move back to Gio's frame.
Hello, everybody. I want to show you my sketchbook, and it's a very soft surface. You see, it's a, I don't know which material it is, but it's very soft. And I take a tape over, and then I used the watercolor ground titanium white twice, and then I used the transparent watercolor one time and let it dry. And today you can paint wonderful. You see the water drops. It's wonderful watercolor effects, and I love it very much. It's perfect for my sketchbook. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing the final piece, this piece, on your Instagram and Facebook.
Yes, it's it's not this piece. It's it looks like that.
Okay.
But it's another piece, and I can show tomorrow
All right.
evening.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
since you mentioned this part, Sabine is our special guest for tomorrow's Friday Live. So do come back for tomorrow's session. Thank you again, Sabine. Now I'll call on Ashley. I think she has 2 artworks.
Thank you.
Hello, yeah, I do. So somebody asked about canvas. And now this is just like a canvas,
Oh, nice.
like a canvas paper, I want to say. It's canvas, it's cotton. And it came pre-primed. And then I just painted 2 coats of the transparent, not the transparent, sorry, titanium white. It was really fun. I was able to get a lot of, this is like a water reflection. I was able to kind of get that water reflection. There's a learning curve to this for me anyway. So that one was really cool. And then I, like Caroline, I seal with a cold wax. This is my favorite product for sealing. It's Dorland's cold wax or Dorland's wax medium. It dries completely hard. It has like a resin in it, so it's not sticky or anything. And then it just makes it waterproof. I don't have glass on this. I am not a huge fan of glass on my watercolors because I like that matte effect that you get with watercolor. And I'm not allowed to handle glass anymore. We won't talk about it. And then this one, this is like a cradled wood panel. And I started a painting on the back and it just was going horribly. So I flipped it over and painted the ground on the inside. And then I think Ian was asking if you can do wet on wet, and you sure can. I did a lot of wet on wet to get the cool effects on this bison. So yeah, those are mine. What's up?
Excuse me. Do you mean that you paint in watercolor before it is dry, before the ground is dry?
No, you have to let it dry for at least 24 hours.
Okay.
I would also find, and you probably found, that the ground allows the watercolor to behave similar to paper, but definitely not the same as paper. And it is slower to dry than it would be on paper, the actual watercolor layer.
It's definitely different, but in a really fun way.
Thank you, Ashley. Now let's have Gio back. Gio.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, on the last, I create this shade of green and blue for 2 different mixes. In reality, it's 3, but I use in our first part, I use phthalo blue grishe, cadmium red medium with buff titanium, but the major component is phthalo blue green shade for the strong. And in the second, I use the same, but I apply more phthalo blue grishe and more buff titanium. In this case, use only buff titanium. And in the last, I use the same mixes, but with titanium white. I create a different shade of this green and blue. It's very, very...
Excuse me,
Yeah?
what red is it?
It's cadmium red medium.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So you're creating those colors by using watercolors and mixing them into the ground, is what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Thank you. And the last I show them this particular is my cockapop box with the, I apply a little zoom. Okay, this is a 4 different watercolor, but this is a transparent watercolor. If you want, you change this part. I apply in this case and create. This product is very perfect for the wine bottle label, for creating your artworks. Or for the Christmas label gift. And one blue. In this case, I'll not use the water, but directly. In the glass, for example, is preferable to cleaning the surface, not with the degreaser, but it's the simple water or normal hand soap. This is a phthalo green. Is recommended for drying naturally. Don't use the air dryer. Is not recommended for the rush dry. It's preferred naturally. Is better for the products and is better for the result. This is Queen Gold for create.
So the idea of the ground and the colored ground is so that you can then let it dry and then paint other colors of watercolor over the top.
Yeah. In this case, I mix it all together with the transparent brown. For example, in a plastic glass. Oops. In this case, if you want one layer or 2 layer maximum, but recommended in another way, the second layer for connecting the layers. Okay. And the last, I use the mixing to ground, in this case, Mars Black and Titanium White for create before the color, the tinted color, the gray. Is more white, in this case, more black.
Giovanni,
Sí.
we have a question here in Zoom. Do you mind answering it, please? Could you use transparent ground mixed with watercolors, like now, to glaze over the first watercolor layers? Would it leave the layers beneath it? Do you understand that? So if I paint watercolor, transparent ground with colors like you have now, over some watercolor, will it move the watercolor away? Will it take the watercolor away? Will it remove the watercolor underneath?
Puoi ripetere un attimo in italiano, Angela, non ho capito.
Ok, se tu usi questa mistura del ground trasparente con i colori,
Sì.
dipingi sopra un'altra, dove ci sia dipinto un altro acquarello, questo layer di ground porta via quell'acquarello che era di sotto?
No, no,
No.
absolutely no.
So it won't remove the watercolor that was underneath, right?
No, no.
It won't lift the layers. That is what Pam asked.
I would recommend first putting a layer of clear down first, and then you can put your tinted clear watercolor mixed with watercolor clear ground on top of that. So I'd actually do first a layer. It's similar to what I've shown in the past where I've done a pencil sketch and then put a clear coat of watercolor ground over and then painted over the sketch and then later tinted it to make it look like an old-timey Western.
Okay. In this case, I'm mixing the titanium and Mars black in different quantity for light gray and strong gray. And now applying the color, I apply one color green blue shade. One top this and one dot this. And queen gold.
While you're
Dot.
preparing your mix, Giovanni, while you're
What?
preparing, there is a question here. Buffy wants to ask a question to Ashley and a question to Gabriel. By the way, Gabriel, everyone says, please don't touch it because they love your experiment, okay? And another a question that Buffy wants is, was it 1 or 2 coats and did you water down the ground at all? The walnut ink looks awesome. Are you there, Gabriel?
I think
I'm here. What was the question?
Was it 1 or 2 coats? And did you water down the ground at all? The walnut ink looks awesome.
Oh, no, I just put one layer of the watercolor ground on a surface like matte board. But if I was covering up like an old painting or something that maybe, you know, here we do a lot of swatches, right? So depending on how thick the paint was, it may need 2 coats. So it just depends on how much pigment was on the previous surface. So that's up to your description.
The same question is for Ashley. If you did 1 or 2 coats.
I did 2 coats and I didn't water it down. I've had really bad experiences in the past watering it down too much. And then it like, you go to paint on it and it just bleeds. It like won't hold. I don't know how to explain that, but I think it kind of becomes porous when you add too much water. I wasted like a whole jar, one of the small jars, luckily, but I wasted like a whole jar of the watercolor ground by adding too much water. So that's important.
Actually,
good exchange of tips today. Thank you once again, especially to our beautiful couple here, Gio and Leticia, for always being ready to share. Of course, we have Gabriel too. Let's put this in gallery view. Gabriel, we had Caroline and Ashley and Sabine, and of course, Angela for always helping us with reading questions and even translation. Angela seems like an FM channel. She sounds like an FM channel to me. And then you do tune in to different channels. So thank you. Tomorrow, please do come back at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. Earlier we had Sabine for kind of a preview of what she can do. I know she has lots of techniques to share. So let's all gather again tomorrow. See you all.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Bye.